Hey there, my name's Anthony Spiteri and I'm a Senior Global Technologist in the Product Strategy Group at Veeam. But today I'm talking to you about Managed Kubernetes for learning and labbing. So what I wanted to do was take a very quick look, maybe 10-20 minutes, at some examples of how you guys can leverage the resources that are out there to skill up on your Kubernetes. So before that, I just want to set the scene. This isn't going to be very slide heavy at all. In fact, there's only going to be a total of 3 slides, including the resources for what I'm going to show you. But first, what does it take to be a master? So there is a little bit of a definition that does exist out there if you do a bit of a search, in that 10,000 hours of applying yourself at something makes you a master of the thing that you're applying yourself to. So in that case, it's a lot of time, a lot of effort that needs to go into play. Now, in this world, in the Kubernetes and the open source world, it's not that easy to get the resources to actually make that 10,000 hours. Well, let's forget about the 10,000 hours. Let's talk about what it takes to actually get you tinkering, to be able to get proficient in the technology that you're trying to get better at. In this case, we're talking about Kubernetes. So what I've been able to do is leverage resources that are out there, even on the cloud, or if they're local to my home lab, or even in lab environments themselves, to skill up and get more proficient myself at Kubernetes. Now, I have not done 10,000 hours. I am not a master. However, what I'm going to show you guys over the next sort of 10 to 20 minutes is 3 examples of systems and platforms that you can leverage to become better at Kubernetes. And I approach this from the point of view of not being a developer, right? I approach this from the point of view of being a infrastructure guy who's learning the ropes. I came from virtualization, came from physical. Kubernetes, containerization is slightly different. We've got to get our hands dirty. We've got to get into it. We've got to talk about, about that 10,000 hours that I talked about earlier before. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through 3 different scenarios. We're going to look at a company called Platform 9 that offers managed Kubernetes and does it slightly differently in terms of having things in a control plane. We're then going to look at a new company that's come out of GA, or it's going to be at GA at KubeCon next week or this week, and that's Sivo. And they do things a little bit different. They're a pure cloud native hosting company. And then I'm going to take a little bit of a different spin in a resource that's out there from Cast and K10 from Veeam that allows you to take a lab, but the lab is live, which means you guys can tinker with Kubernetes live without having to pay anything. All right, so let's take a look and start. And by the end of this, I hope that you'll get a little bit of an understanding about what you guys can do to skill up and get more proficient at Kubernetes. Okay, so let's start off by looking at Platform 9. Now, Platform 9 has been around for a while, in fact, since about 2013. If you want more information on Platform 9, please head to the link that I'm going to post at the end of the presentation or attached to the link itself. So what we're going to do, I'm going to quickly go through Platform 9, show its benefits, and show how it actually can help you guys get started really quickly and have this home lab for Kubernetes. Now, the good thing about Platform 9 is that they're a managed service. They do a bunch of solutions, managed Kubernetes, obviously OpenStack, bare metal, they're doing KubeVirt as well, but we're going to focus on managed Kubernetes. Now, what's really interesting about Platform 9 is that they have a freedom tier, so up to 3 clusters and 20 nodes. When you think about it, that's quite significant. So this is a really great way to deploy a bare metal or a bare OS into a virtual environment, into your home lab, and actually run up some Kubernetes clusters, all managed as well. So cheap is good. Free is good. Let's take a look and see how this actually works. I'm going to do a quick end-to-end installation of a cluster. Before that, let's just look at the value proposition here, right? And effectively, what I've been talking about at the start here in terms of why you would look to a managed Kubernetes service for your labbing, for your learning, this is basically it, right? So before a managed Kubernetes service, this isn't just Platform 9. You got to download Kubernetes, to download Docker, install a node, validate, debug, blah, blah, blah. Repeat steps 2 to 5 for every server. Of course, there's ways that you can actually automate that and then basically start to deploy applications and go from there. With Platform 9 and what other managed Kubernetes platforms do is let you basically create the account, connect your servers, and then basically deploy and configure the Kubernetes clusters through the service. and then effectively start using Kubernetes. We want to get to the meat and potatoes quickly, right? That's what we want. We want to be able to use this in our home labs to be able to actually get hands-on with Kubernetes as quickly as possible. So let's go through a Platform 9 install. So I've actually logged into the dashboard here. Again, pretty simple user interface. This is pretty indicative of most managed Kubernetes platforms. You can see here that I've got a bunch of clusters already configured. I've got nodes. These nodes are basically bare virtual machines that live on vCenter, so we can all kind of get those up and running. Ubuntu, CentOS, and a few other bits and pieces. And then I've got the clusters here. So these are the clusters. These are my existing Kubernetes instances that I have running on Platform 9. But let's go and basically prep a node and create a cluster, and let's see how quickly we can get to the, kube control get nodes situation. So what I'm going to do first is go to the nodes, and we're going to onboard a node. So what I've done before that is I've actually got into vSphere. You can see that I've got this virtual machine here, Labs CNDM 01. It's got a bunch of resources allocated to it, a bit of RAM, CPU, who would have thought, but it's a single machine. So what I'm going to do is deploy a single node master. So in doing that, let's go back to Platform 9. So let's go to the nodes and let's onboard a node. So we've got a couple of options here. You can do a VM template, or you can do it via the Platform 9 CLI. So I'm going to use that method. So this is pretty cool because you can just download your Ubuntu. They've got an Ubuntu OVA here that you can download directly. It's pretty much ready to go. In terms of what I've got, as you saw in the vCenter, I've got my own bare OS. So I'm going to use the Platform 9 CLI to do the configuration. So let's copy that. Let's go back here and paste that in. Okay, so we're downloading the Platform 9 binary. Wait for that to download. Go back here. We'll basically do a config set. So the config set here basically is linking the node and onboarding it to our Platform 9 account. Okay, let's go back and get the details. Password. Region is just default, and hopefully we get a tick at the end here if I entered the password correctly. There we go, so stored configuration details are successful. The next step is to actually prep the nodes. So let's go through and actually start that off and come back when it's finished. So it's going to do a bunch of prerequisites first. Hopefully we pass all of those. We might get a warning about the RAM. Let's have a look and see. Okay, we're all green here. So now it's completed the prerequisites, and it's going to download the host agent, which is going to effectively be the control agent between the local virtual machine that you've deployed and the Platform 9 control plane. So again, so simple, so easy, but this is going to do it all for us, right? So just to get again to that meat and potatoes that we're after. Okay, all the packages have installed. We're initializing the host successfully, authorizing the host. So what this is doing again is setting up that control plane. The host agent is going to authorize it, and then we can go to the next step in the Platform 9 UI to finalize the Kubernetes deployment. Okay, so there we go. It's connected to the Platform 9 control plane. Let's head back to the Platform 9 UI. Let's go back to where we were in terms of the clusters. And let's add a new cluster. Create a cluster. Okay, and we're going to basically we're going to do a quick, let's do a one-click cluster. So one-click install. We can actually be a little bit more customized if we want, but for the purpose of this, and again, the aim here is to get to that kube control get nodes as quickly as possible. Let's do a one-click cluster. At the moment, it's saying that there's no nodes available. That's because I think it still needs to take a little bit of time for that preparation to be reflected in the UI. So let's give that a couple of minutes to come back. And while we're waiting as well, let's just make sure that we can see the options here. It's not just, bare OS virtual machines. You can do physicals, and you can actually deploy the control plane and have control of Amazon Web Services, Kubernetes, or Microsoft Azure as well. So pretty cool there. All right, let's have a look and see if we've got this host up and running. Not just yet. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, the node is now ready to go. We've got a few issues with the RAM capacity and CPU count, but it's going to let us go ahead anyway. So let's give this a name. So lab CNDM-01. We can choose a Kubernetes flavor. So let's go with one of the latest that they've got for their managed Kubernetes. Let's click on the actual node itself. Even though it's giving us the warnings, we still should be okay. And literally just click on complete. So let's hit complete there. And now what the Platform 9 control plane is going to do is talk back to the agent and deploy all the bits that are required to run a Kubernetes cluster on this single host. And you'll see exactly the process here as we move through. So let's wait and see this to finish. It will take about 3 to 5 minutes and then we'll come back. Okay, so all those tasks is completed. So let's go back and have a look and see what we've done here, or what Platform 9's done for us really. So all the stuff that we really don't want to be doing to get to, a place where we can deploy our Kubernetes applications. So, configuring Docker starting Docker, configuring etcd, installing the network, configuring the kubelet and kube proxy, and then running a whole bunch of other bits and pieces, and also adding some Kubernetes deployments and controls in there so we can and also deploying some Platform 9 controls into the cluster as well. So let's go now here, and you can see that we've got option now to do a dashboard and get the kube config. So if we go back to clusters though, so let's go back here. If we go to the clusters, you can see now that we've got CNDM lab there. So here we go. This is the information that we need. We can see the deployed. Well, here's where you'll see everything. All right, so let's download the kube config because that's going to be important. Let's use it as a token because what we want to do is effectively access this cluster from our local machine to start interacting with it, right? So we could do that directly on the VM itself, but also we want to be able to interact with this on our desktops or on our PCs where we want to, start to deploy applications and whatnot. Let's download that. So we've got that in the background. Okay, let's save that. Cool. Okay, with that done, let's go back to the machine. And now if I do a kube control, you'll see that we've got it installed now. So let's do a get nodes. Now this will refuse access because effectively it doesn't know which server to connect to. Okay, so the context isn't set there. So we can do this on the actual server itself, but what I'm going to do is jump back to my local machine and I'm going to apply the kube config into the local machine and then we'll be able to access it. So give me a second to do that. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. So we've got this single node mask. So now from here, let's take a look and see what we've got on the actual server itself. Okay, we can see we've got a number of Platform 9 services as well as the kube system and the dashboard running. Let's do our services. Okay, doing all. Okay, cool. So this is what we kind of expect, right? So I've got a couple of blog posts as well on how you can extend this, add MetaLB networking for the load balancing, how you can actually add a CSI using Rook and Longhorn. There's a bunch of stuff you can do here with Platform 9. But ultimately here, what you've got within a couple of minutes is a Kubernetes cluster that you can start to tinker with, you can start to lab with. It's free because it's hosted as a virtual machine on your vSphere infrastructure, controlled by Platform 9 or managed by Platform 9. And the best part about that, you're using the Platform 9 free tier. So that's a really good example of probably my favorite example of a managed Kubernetes instance for labbing for your home labs and learning. Right, so let's move on. Right then, so let's take a look at another type of managed Kubernetes, which is actually the one where it's online and the control plane lives online and you deploy the nodes and interact with that. Now, the cool things about some of these ones that I'm going to show you, here's Sivo, but effectively the great thing about this is the price. Very cheap, very easy to deploy and use and get you guys into a lab that's online and you can tinker with straight away. Okay, so let's log in to Chivo or Sivo. Okay, let's go to the Kubernetes section here, and you can see here I haven't actually got a cluster launched up. So let's go quickly and create a new cluster. You can see that I'm in the Germany region looking by that flag. Now the cool thing about Sivo is the cost. If you look at the extra small, small, medium, very, very good value in terms of what you're paying per month in order to, tinker with Kubernetes and get started at some level, right? That's what it's all about. Again, we're here in the labs, we're wanting to tinker, wanting to play, wanting to get familiar with what it is to run Kubernetes, interact with it, and run applications on top of Kubernetes. So let's do a quick name here. So let's call this CNDM demo. Okay, default network, firewall, choose from the existing firewall. Let's start with, I'm going to start with one node actually, and then I'm going to choose extra small, just to show you guys that you can actually run something in a small, extra small configuration. So you can see here, hourly or monthly. If we go to hourly, there you go, it's like 0.006 cents per hour, cheapest chips. All right, marketplace here, it's a great marketplace. This is one of the cool things about Sivo. They've got the marketplace built in, so you can actually go in here and actually deploy a number of pre-canned applications from the marketplace. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to show you some command line stuff after this. So let's create this cluster. It's going to take a couple of minutes to create. So let's wait till we get the confirmation it's actually creating, and then it's building. So let's come back when it's done. Okay, so within a couple of minutes, we've got that node deployed. We've got the one node cluster here. We've got a couple of IP addresses that link it to the endpoint, external IP, and the DNS name. We'll use that in a little while to basically test an application that we're going to deploy. There's really not too much to it here, right? So they've got some learning guides, which is great. The Academy is there. The cool thing about this, and the other one that I'm going to show Linode in terms of a managed Kubernetes, is that you're not deploying the master node here. The master node or the control plane is within their own platform, which is pretty cool. So we're only really concerned with those worker nodes, right? So let's come in here, and now what I want to do is get to the command line and access this via the kube control. But before that, how we do that is what we can do here is obviously download the kube config. We can download that. Let's have a look there. Let's save that. Okay. So we can download that, and actually we can insert that into our local config, and we can access it via the kube control in the normal way. But they've actually got a CLI. So the Sivo CLI here can be installed. It's on GitHub. I'll link to it in the notes in this presentation. And basically what this allows us is to interact more programmatically and direct with Sivo itself, which is pretty cool. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. So I've installed it, obviously all the prerequisites as well. So if we do a Sivo here, okay, and let's just, for example, let's check the region that we're in. Okay, it should be Germany. Okay, very good, that's where we are. We can see the current set there. Let's go and take a look and see what clusters we have. Now we should have the cluster that we just set up. There we go, so it's active in France, one node in the pool. Okay, so now what we're going to do, if we were to run the get nodes command now, we shouldn't see anything because we haven't configured this locally. So let's just double check that. All right, let's just assume it's going to time out. So basically from here, we can use the Sivo command line to merge the kube config that we have directly from the API or from the CLI itself, which talks to the Sivo APIs. So let me see if I can remember how to do this. So Sivo, okay, 3S config, I think with the config here. Okay, so we're going to do a merge, and we want to, then we give it the name of the actual cluster itself, or the node, so CNDM demo. Enter on that. Okay, there we go. So that's effectively there. It's kube config. In fact, if I do a cat on the Chivo, look here, CNDM demo config, it's effectively the same thing there. So what we want to do at the end of it is we want to basically save the configuration. CNDM demo. We want to overwrite. Yep, we want to overwrite the Kubernetes config. Yes. And now, like it tells us, if I run that get nodes again, it should list the node that we've provisioned. There we go. Okay, the next thing I wanted to show quickly was how we scale this. So I want to scale this from the website. We could do it from the command line, obviously, but I'm going to go back to the web very quickly to do a scaling. So we're going to go here. Let's go back and do a scale up down. And let's, for example, scale this up to 2 nodes. So this just gives you an idea of what you need to do to scale this up. So let's go to 3 nodes. You know, it adds a bit of cost per month, but again, at $12 per month, it's very cheap. Let's scale the pool. Let's wait for that to finish. Okay, and then we'll come back to the CLI and see that reflected in the CLI. Okay, so they've been scaled up. Let's go back to the CLI. And in theory, it takes a little bit of time to come through, but we should see, there we go, there's one of them. And there's the second one. Very good. So that's currently not ready, but it should pop up as being ready shortly. There we go. We've scaled this out. The last part here of what I want to show is a quick application deployment. So if we do a kubectl get pods, you'll see that we haven't got anything here. Let's do an all. Let's see what is actually contained. Let's see what's contained in this cluster. Okay, so you can see all the Sivo deployments running there, not a problem there. If we do a SVC, so check the services, there shouldn't be anything there, but let's go and, there's one there. Do an all, so we can see all the services, very good. Okay, we can see the traffic system, so it's already got the load balancer there. It's got ingress configured, which is going to be good because when we want to go and actually deploy this application, we're going to effectively be able to access it pretty quickly from that ingress controller. So let's configure Ghost, which is a WordPress type of blog site. So let's do it using a command line. And again, I could actually do this via a Helm chart directly or via Kuberapps, but because Sivo's got this built into the command line quite nicely, I think it's quite interesting just to use it, right? So gigabytes and then cluster cndm demo. Okay, so it's been installed there. So now it's doing it all for you, right? So very simple. They've simplified the operations of Kubernetes. You know, from a tinkering perspective, it's good because you can actually get to the meat and potatoes a bit quicker. If we go now and check the pods with the namespace of Ghost, we should see no. Okay, there we go. So it took a while to start, but it's come up. So now let's take a look and see that if it's running, we should see 1 of 1 happening. There we go. So it took a little bit of time, but finally it's running. So let's go back to the website. Let's go to installed applications. And we'll see that we've got like Ghost set up there. Okay, the cluster ID there. So the external access is via that particular URL. So let's do ghost dot whatever that is there. So cluster information, there's a DNS name, let's copy that. Let's open a new tab, type that in, and then we will go with ghost dot. Now, depending on how my browser wants to behave, it might not like the SSL certificate, it doesn't know, it's always a pain there. So let's try and go with, no, it's going to redirect me. Tell you what, let's just do a curl command. Let's get it on the command line and see what there is there. So curl, paste. Let's take away the HTTP. We should get something that looks like this was a website. There we go. Okay. Have we got Ghost in there? We have. Powered by Ghost. So that's the website. Believe me, that's the website. There's the application. It's open to the web and you can actually use it now. Okay, and the final thing that I want to go through from a learning perspective. So we've talked about labs. We've seen Managed Kubernetes with Platform 9, with Sivo. Now I'm going to take you through a different spin. So what if you just want to learn? So obviously in this area, there's a tremendous amount of learning resources around open source and Kubernetes. Most managed services company actually have these academies. In fact, Platform 9, Sivo, they both do that as examples, but everyone has got a lot of learning on this, right? I want to highlight one though right now where you can actually get on and actually test out a Kubernetes environment just through a lab, right? So this is from Kasten by Veeam. So Kasten, with its K10 product, it's got a lab environment here that you can actually step through. So if we click on this and we register, we'll get an email which will actually take us to a link that'll take us through an online lab. So let's take that email and get the link. Okay, the links come through in an email. Check your junk just in case. And now what it's going to do is going to take us to a online lab portal. So let's let this load up. Now it says 45 minutes, but you can rock through this pretty quickly. So let's effectively start this track. Okay, so it's going to create the environment. And in the background, it's actually deploying a real live internet connected Kubernetes environment. And obviously the point of this lab is to step you through some learning. So number one, from a learning perspective, it's really good. Number two, it's actually an open Kubernetes environment that you can actually tinker with and test with. So that's an actual side benefit of this. So yes, you can follow through end to end the actual steps of the labs, but if you want to just look up some more learning online, some more walkthroughs, you can actually apply it within this environment as well. So this is like a little bit of a workaround, I suppose, a little bit of a hack, but it actually does work. So if you don't want to set up and pay for managed Kubernetes, if you don't want to set up, something like Platform 9 and do it on a vSphere environment within a VM, or if you don't want to do an online managed services like Sivo, then you can do this. So let's actually take a look at this when it comes back and is ready to go. Okay, so let's start this lab. It's going to obviously take us through, on the left-hand side, here's a terminal. So right in here, this is a nodes. This is a fully functional one node master. So you can see here, if we do a get pod, so all the commands that we've been using throughout this particular session, same sort of thing. Let's be consistent and use the service as well. Let's get the services just to see what's running. Okay, but effectively, without any install, without any sign up, without any agent deployment, you've gotten yourself to a position where you can do the kube control get nodes and you're ready to go. That's what we're trying to achieve here, right? It's getting to this point quickly to tinker, muck around and learn. So let's go through this very quickly. Let's copy this. So here we're adding the Kasten Helm chart to actually install that. Let's actually do another one though. Let's install not Kube apps. Let's do another one and let's install Ghost. So you remember Ghost from the previous. So what we've done there is added Bitnami, which is a catalog which you can install applications off. You can also use that for Kube apps. So I've got a link to that at the same time. And what we're going to do here, we've obviously added the repo for Kasten. We've added the repo for Bitnami through Helm. Now what we're going to do is actually add the repo for Ghost and install that. So let's take a look here. Let's install this. And this is the first step that I'm going to do in this particular lab. I'm going totally off script here, you can see, because I want to effectively do something a little bit different. So let's have a look and see if this thing is actually running. So we'll go from there. Let's get some pods. And we should see, there we go, container creating. So you can see that my release is the name of the pods that we're actually creating, and that's going to be what's pushing Ghost to this Kubernetes cluster, again, directly off the internet, so a working deployment of Kubernetes. So while that's going on in the background, let's go through and check through the actual lab itself and work through it. Let's go to the next stage of this. So in this stage, we're going to install MySQL. So, again, even though we've gone through the next page, I'll just finish through this particular walkthrough so we can get through it. We'll go back and see if Ghost has actually finished its install. Actually, here we go. So you can see here that we're actually downloading MySQL as well. So it's a secondary container that we're deploying through the Kubernetes cluster. This should actually start up pretty quickly. There we go. So 0 of 1 running. We should fire it up very soon. We'll give that a bit of time to actually fire up in the background as well once this completes. But we'll take a look at Ghost in the meantime. So the one thing you can't do here is obviously expose it to the internet and test your application, right? But from a playground perspective, a pure learning play, it's just a really quick way to get in and start learning about Kubernetes. So let's have a look here. Have I still got my history? It even completes the history. So everything is running. We've got the MySQL running. We can just step right through this. But I think you guys get the point, right? This here, and I'll link to it again in the notes of the presentation, is that you've got a really easy way to get to a Kubernetes environment within a couple of minutes and start mucking around to tinker and learn. Right, so there we go. So we've seen the 3 different examples of how we can get more proficient at Kubernetes for labbing and learning. I like the Platform 9 example, like I said, because it gives you that opportunity to be able to leverage your home infrastructure or a lab that you've got, use a virtual machine, bare OS, but basically have the control plane out in the cloud. The Sivo example is all encompassing in the cloud, but at a very, very cheap and reasonable rate. And then the third example is that lab setup from Kasten, which gives you a lab to just tinker around with almost on demand and at your own desire. So 3 great examples. The links are there. You can see them on screen. I hope that from this short session, you've seen a really good way to leverage Kubernetes, to tinker, to try, get it in your lab, get hands-on, and get more proficient.